that is students' intellectual meet. Learning never, as we all know, that learning never exhausts the mind, and it cannot be attained by chance, but it must be sought. We are lucky enough that our ISPL forum has continuously been various topics on literature and language every Sunday in the form of uh, Sunday Sahityik Satsang and every Saturday in the form of SIM. In this series, today we are going to listen on the topic Understanding Literature as a Method and Archive. And to speak on this topic, on this interesting topic, we have Dr. Samrat Sen Gupta. And Dr. Sen Gupta is an associate professor in the Department of English, Sidho Kanhu Birsa University, West Bengal. I welcome you, sir. And to chair the session, we have with us Dr. Sanjay Kumar Singh, Assistant Dean, Student Affairs, Department of Humanities, OP Jindal University, Raigad. I welcome you, sir. And to moderate the session, we have with us Mr. Chirantan Das Mahapatra, research scholar in English, Pandit Ravi Shankar Shukla University, Raipur. As we all know that this month's events are being coordinated by Mr. Nurul Huda, who is also the PRO of ISPL Chhattisgarh Forum. But as I have got his message that his mic is not working properly, so I think he cannot handle today's program. So here I am inviting the moderator of this event to continue the session, Mr. Chirantan Das Mahapatra. He is a research scholar in English, Pandit Ravi Shankar Shukla in University, Raipur. So Mr. Mahapatra, please continue. Unmute yourself. Please unmute. Your mic is muted.
Sorry, sir.
Oh.
Thank you, ma'am, for introducing me, and good evening to one and all present over here. And I'm grateful that ISPL has given me this particular opportunity to moderate this particular session. So, as we all know that today our topic of discussion is understanding literature as a method and archive. So, before beginning this particular session, I just want to introduce our chairperson and chief speaker of this particular session.
Excuse me, Chirantan, please switch on
Yes,
your video. Let us see you also.
ma'am, I think I can see my image here.
Yeah, okay. You have joined with two, I think. With two
Yes.
elements here, yeah. So no problem. You can continue.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. First,
Chirantan, I think you
yes,
are
ma'am.
using two devices, so you have to put on the video of both the devices. Then only we can see you. You have
Okay,
to
ma'am.
put on, yes, that. Okay, thank you.
First of all, I am going to introduce the chief speaker of today's session, Dr. Samrat Sengupta, sir. Dr. Samrat Sengupta is an associate professor of Department of English in Sidhu Kanu Birsa University, West Bengal. His research interest includes experimental Bengali literature, gender studies, post-structuralism, memory studies, and post-humanism. He has edited a special issue of the international journal Sanglap on caste in humanities. His first Bengali monograph on Pratibhader Pathakram, which we can say it as Syllabi of Resistance, has been published in 2022. His co-edited volume on Bengali experimental writer Nabarun Bhattacharya, entitled Nabarun Bhattacharya, Aesthetics and Politics in a World After Ethics, has been published from Bloomsbury. We are highly grateful and privileged to have you, sir. Now I'm going to introduce the chairperson of today's session, Singh sir. Dr. Sanjay Kumar Singh is an assistant dean and professor of English of Department of Humanities in O.P. Jindal University, Raigad. He has completed his PhD in English on the topic Treatment of History in the Major Novels of Amitabh Ghosh from APS University, Rewa, Madhya Pradesh in 2005. His specialization in Indian writing in English and communication skills. He has the vast experience of 17 years of teaching. He has organized various workshops and participated in many national and international conferences to enlighten the participants. His famous edited books are Subaltern Voices in Indian English Novels, Environmental Concerns in Indian Writing in English, Aspects of Functional English, etc. We are also grateful and privileged to have you, sir. So now, with the due permission of our chairperson, sir, I am requesting the chief speaker of today's session, Dr. Samrat Sengupta, sir, to discuss his view on the topic, understanding literature as a method and archive. Sir, may I?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for this very kind introduction and also for inviting me to this forum. I believe just to congratulate you to carry on with this venture outside the mainstream university or college, because I think this is a very, very important step to be taken, because we all have to take academia beyond the institutions. It's really a wonderful effort. I was also talking about this with my colleague Shourabh Da, uh, and today, as you can see, my topic of discussion is it sounds very amorphous. I have done it deliberately. I don't want to discuss on any one aspect of literature or particular text as such. This is something which I discuss in the opening classes of the literary theory when I teach, and because when we talk about literature, either we talk about literary criticism or we think about the use of literature in other disciplines. But here in this lecture, I will like to talk about literature as a method, the specificity of literature as a system of knowledge, uh, and not only as an application meant for other disciplines, but also its difference and its close connection with some other disciplines, other forms of investigation, I would say, critical investigation, like maybe phenomenology or memory studies, uh, just like that. And also its difference from some of the mainstream disciplines like history, law, or economics. I will like to start my lecture with an example which perhaps many of you are familiar with, because it is Shakespeare, again Shakespeare, uh, the most favorite and most perhaps important author, playwright uh, of for the students and teachers of English literature. His play Measure for Measure. I will not discuss the play with you. As I promised, I will talk about the literariness, the literary aspect of this play, particularly since this is a play about law and justice and also about governance. Uh, as we see that the ruler of the country, of the state, the duke, he deliberately hands over the power to uh, a person called Angelo. He's supposedly a very honest and upright person, and he goes incognito and observes what is happening in his state from his secrecy in disguise. And Angelo is supposed to deliver justice to the state, but we see that he himself is, alleged with the crime of sexual exploitation. On one hand, he is as it always happens, we will see all around this is happening, that people who are in power often themselves are corrupt. Whatever they are supposed to punish, they're doing the same things, maybe in other forms. So it puts a serious question on the notion of justice. Who is capable of delivering justice? If there is one form of thinking justice, of what is right and what is wrong, or justice is also situational, it is also circumstantial, if we use the legal term circumstantial. And if you remember, if you think about the legal philosophy as well, if you talk with the lawyers, I hope the real lawyers are not here to shut me down. But if you talk with the lawyers, you will realize that the law is not only about a series of conjectures, a series of assertions, a series of what is scripted. Again, I'm using the word scripted very consciously. What is written, what is given to us as logos, as truth. But it is also about each and every time thinking law through experience, thinking each and every case differently, and ascertain how justice has to be delivered. So justice on one hand is calculable, on the other hand, justice is incalculable. Because it is incalculable, you have to go through the entire process of trial, because we don't know what is justice. We don't know a priori, if you use this Kantian term. We don't know a priori what is justice. So, and I think literature, in a way, pushes us towards this difficult question of what is justice, the incalculability of justice, the immeasurability of justice. If you note the title of the play, Measure for Measure. Measure for measure, definitely, it means, like something like tit for tat, or it also talks about giving exactly the same thing back to the wrongdoer of what he has done to someone else. So it is about balance, it is about calculation, it is about how much justice will be done to whom according to the amount of crime. So both crime and punishment becomes calculable. But in the play we see, if we read the play closely, I'm not going into the details, that it is not so easily calculable. It is not calculable in terms of what is there in the book of law. Okay, and I have read some amount of documents on the legal philosophy of the period, and in practice also it always happened that after a verdict was given in the court, there were some local courts which used to examine the validity and effectiveness of that verdict, and used to nullify or hold up the verdict. And it always happened. It's just like it happened in the play. The verdict given by Angelo was not kept in the end. It changed according to the situation. It was remeasured, rethought. So, and it is a very important moment in history, because Renaissance period, where the play was written, Renaissance was also called early modern, and it is also kind of entry into modernity. And one of the prime faith of modernity is that we can calculate. That humans have the ability to calculate, to measure, to understand the world, uh, to epistemologically cognize the world in the way it is. So, unlike the pre-modern set of belief that which actually relied on some kind of mysticism, the notion of the mystic, where you don't know the intentions of God, where God has intended, God has made the world in a mysterious way, which is difficult to decipher. It used to be a hermeneutic exercise. Now, if we keep these things in mind, then modernity is also a moment where it is a celebration of human reason. And reason again is something, if you think in terms of modernity, it is connected with calculation, measurement, kind of overarching form of rationality, which can be used in each and every case. Human reason, the celebration of human reason. But this particular play will show that human reason is also circumstantial, situational, is not absolute, it is non-absolute. And this non-absoluteness is something which I think that literature teaches us. Literature, and how does it teach? That is what I will discuss right now. That how that can be actually made to effect. So the three very important things. One is calculative reason. The second is legal reason, the idea of law and justice. That justice can be done easily. And the third is the notion of the economics. You also have to remember that the modern economics is something, the idea of money, the idea of exchange, something which is also coming in the way it operates in today's world in a very, very preliminary way in the Renaissance. That is also one of the prime cause for calling it early modern, maybe. So, and also the art of governance. The art of governance it also depends on calculation, on how correctly you can measure the different happenings around you, and how you can manage those calculations. And in this case, actually, the literary text like Measure for Measure brings out the negated underbelly of calculation, of what is left out. What is, if we talk in the language of critical theory, what is abject? The notion of the abject, something which is not considered important, but is something which is kept out of consideration. That emerges in literature. And that happens repeatedly in Shakespeare. I'm not going into the details. So, if we quote from Hamlet's famous "Something is rotten in the state of Denmark," then literature is also about rottenness. Literature is about death. Literature is about absence. You might contradict me and say that, sir, there are literatures which are romantic, which talks about the beauty of the nature, which talks about love, which talks about positive emotion. But if you examine closely, you will see there also literature talks about death. Literature talks about nothingness. Like the romantic poems, the odes of Keats, John Keats, for example, definitely they talk about death and the relationship of the death with Bard's song, in the Song of the Nightingale, for example. Or the relationship of death with the Grecian arm. So death is something, the experience of dying, the experience of not being there. Death not only physical death, but not only being there. The experience of absence, it is closely connected with literature. And that is, I think, the specificity of the method of literature. The method of literature, because when we think of, I've used another word in the title of my today's talk, that is archive. Again, if you think about the official notion of the archive is something which is available, which is ready at hand, from which we can decipher the truth, from which we can come to conclusion about a period, about an event, when we go into the governmental archives or other kinds of alternative archives. We think of deciphering the truth, bringing of the truth out of that archive. But literary archive, if we quote, if we use one word from Jacques Derrida, literature archive is also about a process of an archiving, but also baking the archive, baking the official archive, baking the notion of the oneness of truth which is given out there. So literature, the method of literature, it in certain ways goes against the official paradigmatic disciplines like history, law, political science, or at least the way we understand them as truth giving, as something which delivers truth to us, which gives us a steady archive of examining. You also have the notion of legal archive, where we can study the different verdicts, the processes of how a legal case has proceeded, etc. So from here, if you take up the notion of rottenness, of death, and certainly the notion of the spectral, something which is apparently not there, but it is there. It is there as an absent presence in your system of knowledge, in your epistemology, your way of understanding, your structuring of the reality, the way you have started imagining, organizing our reality on one particular principle or one set of principles. You have negated certain things. Literature has the inherent ability to bring out those negations. And here literature comes close to religion also in certain ways, because religion also sometimes talks about emotions and realities which are beyond our cognizable qualities, abilities to cognize. But the difference between literature and religion is that literature keeps it open for thinking. But religion gives it a closure. There are experiences which are inscrutable, which are beyond human cognition, beyond human understanding. But those experiences would be given a name, would be given a signifier, the signifier of God. Okay, so that is how at least the Derridian scholar John D. Caputo discusses when he talks about negative theology. So negation is one way of moving towards truth. But religion believes that through negation you can actually reach the truth at some point. And literature evokes negation in the course of language, in the course of understanding, but doesn't conclude about one particular truth. It is in a very, very simple way. It is much more complex actually, but to put it in a very, very simple easy to understand me. So, and John D. Caputo's work is about the relationship of deconstruction with religion, religious hermeneutics and deconstructive hermeneutics, of how we make sense of things through negation. Very quickly, when we used to study deconstruction, one reference was repeatedly discussed. That is from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. That how is God? I don't know how you pronounce in your language. My Sanskrit is not very good, but God was called Abang Manushogochar. Abang Manushogochar. Bang means vak, speech. God is beyond speech and mind. Abang Manushogochar. So you reach God through negation. Neti, neti, neti. You reach God through negation. Philosophy, which comes very close to Saussure's philosophy of language, Saussure's philosophy of sign, of language. How you come to meaning through negation. In language, there are only negations without any positive term. Famous statement by Saussure. And I'm not asserting anything, but if we think intuitively, Saussure's doctoral work was on Paninian grammar. So he had some amount of idea about Indian knowledge systems. And in different religions, we have this tendency of understanding God through negation, through what he is not, what God is not. So negation has a very important function in the system of knowledge, but through modernity, we have a very, very strong faith on assertion, on position, on positing the truth. Posit means giving it a position, giving it a particular mark. And I think literature as a method can unsettle this positing. And that is my point of contention here. And in this way, if we think of the philosophy of deconstruction as something which does not let this process of negation completed, that is the process of negation through which we arrive at truth. To understand something, we continuously need to grapple with what it is not, what is negated in the process of its making, in the process of making meaning of something. This continuous grappling with negation, which structuralism suggests, is put to the other extreme by deconstruction when it talks about the impossibility of arriving at truth. And this negation happening in a never-ending way. So we have the notion of difference. Through difference, we arrive at meaning, but this difference is also differed. It continuously gets differed. And that is the crux of Derridian notion of différance in French, différence. The same spelling, which meant both, same word used to mean both, difference and difference. Difference and difference. With the same word, because it's a similar sounding word. The spellings are different, but Derrida uses the same spelling with a kind of accent on A. But in French, both difference and difference are pronounced as différance. And when he writes it with the same spelling, meaning both, Derrida's mother said, "Oh my God, Derrida does not even know English, the French language properly. He is writing wrong spelling." There is a documentary on Jacques Derrida where this happens. Derrida's mother says, "My son doesn't know the spelling of difference or différance." So, in that way, literature comes very close to deconstruction. We think that deconstruction is a philosophical exercise, definitely comes from philosophy, but literature comes very close to, as I told, it comes close to religion, it also comes close to deconstruction. Literature comes very close to deconstruction and phenomenology. Why phenomenology? Will come to that. What is phenomenology? Very soon I'll come to that. So from here, I will just cite a few examples to understand these things. As I already gave one example from Measure for Measure and then proceeded, I talked about the odes of Keats, but also when we talk about romantic love, this is one of the most fascinating poems I have read in the syllabi of English literature. That is the poem by Andrew Marvell, To His Coy Mistress. The death a fine and private place, but none I think to dare embrace. I think one of some of the brilliant lines of English literature. When we talk about death, we talk about intimacy, and while talking about it, we talk about death. So there is a peculiar relationship between death and love throughout the history of English literature. The shadow of death looms large on the love poetry in particular. Love happens because of temporality. To digress very quickly, I don't remember the author or something. I did a science fiction story where there was this revolution of the robots. The robots, the artificial intelligence, they became very, very advanced. And they said that we are as intelligent as you humans. So we want to make a separate civilization. And the chief scientist who is trying to handle the AI, they said that, okay, you can make a civilization, but you will not succeed. And then their civilization was made in a big island. And after a few days, the robots started destroying themselves. Though, as a matter of fact, the robots are immortal. They can transfer their intelligence to a new robotic body. Yet they were destroying their memory. They were committing suicide, and the civilization, obviously, it collapsed. And what was the reason? Because they don't have death. Without death, life and each and every aspect of life becomes meaningless. So, death and love also, you see. And when we think about a relationship, we think about love, we think about intimacy, we negate the possibility of death. But death remains as an absent presence. It remains as a negation within the rhetoric of love. Within the rhetoric of love itself. So death is one of the negations, one of the prime negations, or we can call it the archaeology of negation. It is the basic form of negation which informs other negations also. Because death is the fundamental symbol of absence, of not being there. So death occupies a very, very important position in Derridian thinking also, and the thinking of phenomenologists like Heidegger or Husserl, and definitely of deconstructivists like Jacques Derrida. It's a very, very important, a very, very important position. Now I will come quickly to the notion of archive, and I will read a sentence from Derrida's Archive Fever, page 79. I will read the sentence and then come back. If repetition is thus inscribed at the heart of the future to come, one must also impose there in the same stroke the death drive, the violence of forgetting, super repression. Super repression means suppression and repression. The anarchize, in short, the possibility of putting to death the very thing, whatever its name, which carries the law in its tradition, the archon of the archive. Archon is a word which is closely connected with archive. Etymologically, archon means the commander. the one who gives the law. So the oneness of law, the oneness of reason, the oneness of archive, which organizes each and every material together, could be challenged by the dead drive. And what is dead drive? I will very quickly try to summarize that. It's a very difficult concept, but not impossible to understand. I can refer to two very important works by Sigmund Freud. And again, I forgot to mention that apart from religion and deconstruction, literature shares a very close relationship to psychoanalysis. We will come to that. Literature shares a very close relationship to psychoanalysis. Freud's essay, The Mystic Writing Pad, which is sometimes included in the literature syllabus of many universities, Mystic Writing Pad, where Freud compares the human psyche with a mystic writing pad. And what is a mystic writing pad? Mystic writing pad is a toy which is meant for the children to learn the alphabets and sentences. So when they write on a surface, and beneath the surface there is a kind of plasticine-like material, and the surface is soft, and when you write on it, kind of inscriptions are made. And when you pull back the surface, it again gets flattened. So again, you use the pencil or the stylus, the sharp object, again to write, and you take out the surface. It doesn't like which is slightly like that. It does not send back the not send what was before, but psyche can automatic writing back the signals, which send back the from was written before. So you write and again, and it goes. Nothing goes, everything remains. What was written beneath and what was pulled out erased the surface of the mystic writing pad. Then those inscriptions, invisible inscriptions, may be thought the other is the destructive drive. Okay, the Eros and Thanatos. And then he invents something dangerous, which shakes Freud from inside. And when he plunges into this discovery, he was saying that it would have been better had it not been true. And then he says that these life and death are intimately connected, They cannot be separated. They cannot be segregated. They are connected into a kind of ensemble, life death. You cannot separate one from the other. So, just like life death, the archive and anarchive, the archive which is present out there and what is negated also remains connected in an ensemble. And repetition of a truth, repetition of an idea through overuse of archive actually suppresses the unarchived, but also makes it glaringly visible. And literature has the potential to bring the archive and the unarchived together, unlike other forms of writing. In other forms of writing, you try to give a closure, and through the closure, assert one particular truth. But literature, in its form of dialogic imagination, resists such assertion of one truth. It makes clear, it negates, but it makes the negations visible on its surface. It shows that, see, these are the things which are negative. This is what I'm asserting, I'm saying. So my truth maybe is the truth of Antonio and Bassanio in Merchant of Venice. But I also give you the truth of Shylock. So the negation is much more visible than other forms of writing in literature. We can say literature imitates life most closely, and literature is the most practice-oriented subject. People think that, we have so many forms of practice. Literature is not practical. Literature is impractical. Literature is the most practical subject because each moment of reading literature, you have to deal with the anarchive. Which is brought to the surface very quickly. And you cannot ignore it. Now, this is the crux of what I want to say. I'll just give you a few examples and then move towards the conclusion because this is the theory part. And this is exactly how psychoanalysis also comes close to literature. Particularly, there was a word, I'll tell you the word, 1 minute. ABBAUEN, Abuin. This word Abuin means destruction, but Derrida shows that while translating Freud's Beyond the Pleasure Principle, some people have also translated it as deconstruction. So, deconstruction was not there as a philosophy when Freud was writing, but it has been translated as deconstruction, and Derrida says that maybe there is some amount of truth in that. We cannot be sure. There are differences, but some amount of truth, because this kind of ensemble of life, death, of position and negation as not separable categories, but as connected categories, where one overlaps with the other, one stays beneath the other in a very touched upon connected way, is something which deconstruction talks about. And literary practice surfaces this deconstructive reality most emphatically. So Derrida also talks about fiction as a way of understanding this truth of psychoanalysis. Because psychoanalysis, so long as psychoanalysis is to separate these two, the life drive and the death drive, the eros and the eros and the thanatos, it was fine. It was more scientific, but it became more speculative, and the word speculative was used by Freud himself. Freud was a very, very devoted leader of literature, and he brings literature again and again, starting from Oedipus complex, Electra complex. Several literary examples are given. whatnot, Hamlet, and all that. Everything is referred by Freud. So it's very interesting that he talks about speculation. He says that this is not philosophy, this is not science, this is a speculative exercise. And literature, we all know, is a speculative exercise. Because we cannot come to a conclusion when we say that life and death are separable, then we can secure life. We can secure positive knowledge. But when we say that for each positive moment of asserting knowledge is also connected with negation, we cannot separate them. So, and there is a form of athesis. Athesis. Okay, that is why literature is most practice oriented. It is related to experience, it is related to situation, it is related to phenomenology, how the phenomenon is happening. So knowledge is not something which is given from above, but it is phenomenological. It could be understood through a series of phenomena, connected phenomena. In literature also, we understand truth or whatever close to truth as a kind of series of connected signs, connected signifiers. Now, letters, diaries, something which is not considered as important in mainstream historical examination. Something which lies in the corner of your house. So, personal archive is a very, very important thing, which is becoming important, and I think literary studies has a major contribution in establishing the importance of personal archive. People are now doing research on family photographs, on diaries, on memoirs, on small articles written by someone, unpublished works, letters, and they're trying to grapple with the negated truth, try to grapple with the archive, which is kept outside the mainstream historical archive. And Uma Chakraborty, historian Uma Chakraborty, has some kind of interventions because she's a feminist historian, and she shows that how the women's point of view is often negated from the mainstream history. Because the way the mainstream history was organized, it rendered women's point of view, women's sensibilities, women's participation into some kind of an archive of history. And I believe literature has a role to play because literature also constructs the truth from fragments. In literature, there is no statement. There are a series of events, series of incidents which are happening, and we have to make connections. Literature, the literary critic always have to make connections between events which are happening, and the same methodology would be used in case of personal archive, and personal archives are steeped in emotions, steeped in sentiments, steeped in ideas which are maybe not found in official archives. So it challenges the archon, it challenges the commandment of the mainstream system of knowledge, mainstream thinking of history, thinking of politics. And there was this, I worked on this particular text, Fragments of a Life, Family Archive. It's a book by Maithili Shivaraman. Maithili Shivaraman wrote this book on her grandmother, Shubha Lakshmi. Shubha Lakshmi was a very strong woman, but as it always happened with women, she was trapped in a marriage which restricted her freedom. And we repeatedly see her desire to participate in the nationalist movement, in the Gandhian movement, uh, and her failure. But this desire to participate in the movement, her thinking about that movement, those are stored in her letters, in her short pieces of writing, very short fragmented piece of writing, only one writing was found. And in other documents, like the books she read, the list of books she read, the list of books she wanted from the library. All these were connected, and Shivaraman was grappling to make a family archive, to create a history. And the book was, afterward, and afterward was written by historian Uma Chakraborty, which was called The Blue Tin Trunk. The Blue Tin Trunk. That was the name of the afterword. So a trunk which lies in the corner of the room is like the archive. It could also be thought of as the position of literature, which is sometimes given by the mainstream social scientists. I'm sorry to say, but it always happens sometimes. The literature is not that important. Literary people are talking about stories. They're funny people, and they're like that unimportant tin trunk, which is actually like a bomb, which can explode your archive, which can talk about an alternative history, alternative methodology of examining life. So that is one form. The other is the memoir. Personal archive is one. The other is memoir, life writing, writing about life, memoir, autobiographies, which actually brings alternative histories, alternative forms of understanding, which are negated by the official historiography. One has to remember, I worked to some extent on Dalit literature. Dalit history, Dalit activism, history, politics has been largely influenced by memoirs. No, it opens up the channels of understanding the caste system, caste discrimination in India. Because always the history was not kept outside history, but the actual experience of caste could be understood only through the memoirs. And I was writing on the between the way the historian archive, alternative archive of memoir, it has become popular now. And the way that as a literary scholar, they always as alternative, which was not horizon official. My aim is to read the documents, the release marginal of the Dalit base untouchable, continuous forms. So the way Dalit is, but it could be fascinating. I worked on Manoranjan Bapari, a very important Bengali Dalit writer. And when he talks about his memories, he comes back to Kolkata. He discovers Kolkata. He has a very nostalgic association with Kolkata, as it happens, but his nostalgia is informed by violence. He talks about the places where he was, bound and beaten up. complex relationship with Kolkata, a relationship of life and death. Death together in an ensemble. Through fragments, construction of uh, family archive is possible. Literary artists, through their imagination, sometimes could question, because literature itself has the potential. In the other two cases, I've talked about the literariness of the inquiry. And in case of literature itself, it has the immense potential in the form of its writing in bringing the negation from the surface, in bringing the negations on the surface. How? Like the history of partition may not include the experience of a madman, as we see in Manto's Prabhat Singh. Experience the liminal experience of, we talk about liminality in literature, a very popular term by Homi K. Bhabha. Liminality of experience, where the subject is split. The subject could not be properly placed in any category. Or maybe the experience of a dog. Because sometimes humans also become like dogs. A dog, humans, the other living and non-living things, they're considered as expendable in the larger horizon of history, like the history of partitioning of the country. Now, the dog of Tetwal, another brilliant story by Sadat Hasan Manto, the Urdu writer. But the experience of a dog is articulated. The dog traverses between the border, between both sides of the border, endeared by the army of India and Pakistan, but suddenly, when it comes from the other side, considered as an enemy. So there are dogs, but there are also dog-like humans. So this collapse of categories of human, non-human, the sane and the insane, and the inclusion of the negated, of the marginalized, of the anarchives of history is the potentiality of literature. Potentiality to make the archive. And this potentiality of making the archive, literature as an archive, is also its method. The method of invoking the dead drive beyond the pleasure principle. The pleasure principle which repeats the same truth of nationhood, the same truth of gender discrimination, masculinity, the same truth of casteist construction of the universe. It has the potential to question and look beyond Thank you.
Thank you so thank you. You have discussed various issues so smoothly, and I think all the audience they are getting enlightened um, by listening your speeches. And, sir, in your speech, you have focused on representation of justice, the notion
you know, uh, mm, feminist or women's texts, feminist or not, whatever, women's texts, women's writing, which were considered unimportant. If you remember Elizabeth Browning's poem Aurora Leigh, you see that Aurora Leigh, the main character of the poem, was discouraged to write poetry because women cannot write like Plato, Aristotle, or Sophocles, etc. So, but nowadays we see that women's writing are very important, included in the syllabi. So researchers should look into the new horizon, literary texts which are not foregrounded, but which could be important. But this is one methodology. The other is the use of theory, critical theory, psychoanalysis, deconstruction. Now we have the eco-critical methods. These methods should be considered, but they should not be. They should not read literature from the point of view of history, sociology, or environmental science. The literary method should be kept in mind. That was my contention. That literature is something which questions the authority of the signifier, the absoluteness of the signifier. That methodology should be brought. I think I can say this much. These are the two, literary historiography and critical theory, are the two major ways of reading literature. But I will also talk about, I will also criticism for that should be from the point of view of metaphor, simile, from the point of view of language, use of particular use of literary language, the new criticism, formalism. This should be employed, not to read literature like social science. Literature is not a journalistic, document. That should be kept in mind. Thank you.
Unmute yourself, please.
Any other question from anyone, please? Sir, I have a personal query from my
Yeah,
side.
please.
Sir, you have worked a lot about our famous author or poet Nabaran Bhattacharya. So, what
Yeah,
are the differences you have found in the writings or in the dealings of things in the writings of Nabaran Bhattacharya and Mahasweta Devi? Because many research scholars in India, they are doing work on Mahasweta Devi. Even I am also using one of her novels, Mother of 108684. So that's why I'm
that is
asking
a
this one. So
favorite.
what are the differences you can find in their writing?
I think this is a very interesting and important question, and I think it should not be uh, taken as a question which is related to the family lineage of Navarun from Mahasweta Devi. It is incidental that he is her son, but apart from that, uh, if you think of both of them as Marxist authors, some kind of connection with Marxism, then there are definitely some significant differences. They come from the same tradition. One important thing is Nabarun moves away from realism. It is not that Mahasweta Devi is also strictly connected with realism. There are stories by Mahasweta Devi which are anti-realistic, or if we use the language of Michael Lavi, irrealistic, which are irrealism is a different form of realism. It does not talk about the reality as it is outside, but it reflects on certain artifacts of realism through use of fantasy, use of other kinds of imagination. So that is there in Mahasweta Devi, but Nabarun moves away much more than that. And Nabarun Bhattacharya, uh, he moves on to other uh, uh, areas beyond the question of class struggle. Like for example, the global terror, the question of global terror, uh, terrorism, environmental damage. For example, he has this uh, a novella called Khalna Nagor. Khalna Nagor. We can translate it as Toy Town. Or he has a novella called Lubthak, which is about the killing of the carnage of the god of the street dogs. Uh, and he uses mythology, mythical imagination, the discourse of science fiction. One has to remember that Navarun Bhattacharya translated a collection of science fiction stories, which was originally published in Marathi. Uh, I all this happened uh, the day after tomorrow, something like this. It was published by uh, um, National Education Trust, I think, and Navarun translated it in Bangla. Uh, it was a Marathi, then it was translated into English, then retranslated by Navarun in his very young age. So he had a very strong interest in science fiction. He had a very strong interest in occult, in necromancy, and that gets reflected. It deviates from reality. He did not think that reality could be understood in a steady materialistic, Marxist materialistic way only. He was employing other forms of imagination, because I think he felt that the realistic imagination, the rhetoric of class struggle, the rhetoric of Marxism was not enough to understand the reality around. Because many things were happening which was beyond that. But he had a very strong connection, emotional, emotive connection with Marxism. If you think of his novel Herbert, if you to do a comparative study of Herbert, the end of Herbert and the end of Mahashweta Devi's Mother of 1084, then you will see the Mother of the 1084 ends with the collapse of the mother and a kind of explosion of his appendix. The appendix. So the appendix is something which is the repressed post-colonial reality of negating the history of the tribals, which the Naxalites embody. And if you think of the end of Herbert, Herbert commits suicide, and he was put inside the in the in order to burn his body into the fire, into the electric furnace, and in the electric furnace his body explodes because it was put along with the blanket. In those days, the blanket also used to be put inside the furnace. So this method of putting the body with the blanket inside, and in the inside the blanket, some of his Naxalite friends, they hid the grenades and grenades. So the explosion, the dynamites, the explosion happened because of that. So it became more unconscious. In case of Mahashweta Devi, he was writing in a much more politically active context. The revolution was unconscious. In case of Navarun, it became more unconscious, more unpredictable, more spectral, if you use the word of Jack Derrida. More spectral, more ghostly. If you think of Derrida's notion of third international, fourth international will come in a very unorganized, in an unpredictable way. When people will organize at random, unpredictable, unforeseen. So I think that is the thing.
Thank you, sir. Sir, one more question is there from Nurul sir. Sir, what are your suggestions for a research scholar to publish articles in an UGC care journal? Actually, many research scholars are finding it difficult to publish a journal in UGC care listed journal. So, what are the things
I would
one
say
should
go
keep in
for
mind?
Scopus index publication. Scopus index publication, you read, because almost all the Scopus index journals are already included in UGC care list. UGC care list has three categories. One is the MLA journals listed in the MLA, which are given. The second is the UGC care list is all own selection, and the third is all the Scopus index. So if you look for your area of research, you go in the Scopus website and you search for the journals in your relevant field. You read the articles, you follow their style, the way they are written, and try to send articles some of the articles may be rejected, but it will come with some comments which will help you to develop your article. So it is an exercise, like trial and error method. And you said 4 or 5 articles. Work hard. There is no alternative to hard work, and it could be published.
Thank you, sir. Sir, one more question. As I have gone through the edited works of Dr. Sanjay Kumar Singh, sir, there I find that one of his works it entitled as Subaltern Voices in Indian English Novels. So one question I'm asking you, how, uh, as per your opinion, how the subaltern voices can be raised, or how their problems can be sorted out? Is there any? What are your
No, I don't
suggestions?
have any answer to this question. There is no easy answer. I'll refrain from answering this question. Maybe Sanjay sir can comment.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Any other questions from any participant, please? Sir is eagerly answering all these questions. So please, any other questions from anyone? Okay, thank you. Now I am requesting Dr. Sanjay Kumar Singh, sir, to give his comment or his opinion regarding this particular session. Sir, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chirantan. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So good evening, everyone. At the outset, I would like to thank ISPL and Mr. Nurul for giving me this honor and opportunity to listen this wonderful talk. Really, it's really a wonderful talk. And my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Ghanshyam and all ISPL executives and members that I'm here because of you. As Dr. Samrat started with, literature is more practical and needs more practice. Yeah, it's true. And it offers useful opening only because of that, so that the reality of the people's life may come forward. And the writers increasing claims, there are many writers those who have claimed also that their works are realistic. Just now, Chirantan asked about the subaltern voices. It's a long journey, and I think if you talk about Kuli, Untouchables, that is Mulkraj Anand, and so on, and earlier also. It has started from there that yes, we should come forward and talk about them so that some problems can be sorted out. And thank God there was few problems. I think they were taken up and then started. So numerous scholars have used the work, the literature for illustrations of conclusions based about the period, how it is done. A few have turned to them as the source of indication of the reality also. So we also think while literature is one way or another to reflect the periods of its station. And a better methodology is still needed to be developed for using literature as an opening onto the pages and the ages. And single work or single literature or single lecture cannot done everything. We need so many things because there are many examples where we need to work on systematically, methodically. And when Dr. Satyajit started his talk on archive, it reminded me a couplet of, I think it's a couplet of Bashir Badr. Very early days I read that. And I think you all will agree that this is beginning of the, when he talks about the such kind of thing, he talks about the beginning of the archive at home also. जो साथ है वही घर का नसीब है लेकिन जो साथ है वही घर का नसीब है लेकिन जो खो गया है उसे भी मकान में रखना. So there are two words, ghar and makan, and then he started talking about the archives. So I thank Dr. Samrat Sen Gupta ji, Associate Professor, Sindhu Kano, Birsa University, West Bengal, for his thoughtful, insightful, and very useful talk on understanding literature as a method and archive. His analysis and theoretical reflections on the methods and archives, maybe personal, maybe literary, and maybe memoir, etc. And on more practical engagements with the archive, especially in the humanities and the arts, is inspiring. When he talked about the economics and so on, it was really inspiring. And how do new theories of archives alter the way we understand the relationship between literature and archive? Everything was really nice. Yeah, a few things. I think, as I told you, one lecture cannot do everything. I was expecting some more, but perhaps we need second lecture for this one. And like the questions, how do pioneers and contemporary writers imagine literature's relation to competing practices of data management? Because we all know there are nowadays we have, as he also told, artificial intelligence. So data management is there, things on internet, our emails, chat, WhatsApp, whatever the things. So how do pioneers and contemporary writers imagine literature's relation to competing practices of data management? To what extent does the emergence of all-encompassing digital archives affect literature's engagement with the past? And can a rethinking archives and a database shed light on recent and ongoing literary developments? So these are things which are left, and I think modern archives, they are going to be more important for all of us. I think we all have our own areas, and I think maybe in future we are going to talk about the archives of passwords. I think we all keep. So his talk on each aspect of archive and method is worthwhile, and I congratulate him for his grand success. And as I told, I think the one lecture is not enough to deal with the topic, a vast topic. I think we should leave the topic method. We should go only for archive. And I request ISPL members to ask him to come again. Please invite him once again so that he can complete his whole topic, that is the archive. So with these words, I can say thank you, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Samrat Sen Gupta ji. Really, I'm grateful to you that you have done justice with the topic. There are many things to talk about, but as you know that today is Dhanteras. So to you all from my side, happy Dhanteras. And thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
I
Yes,
will
yes,
definitely
please.
would like to
Yeah.
come back.
Yeah. Because a few things are left, which I was
Of course.
listening to you. I was listening to you very carefully, and because modern literature, I think you all know now we have blogs, etc., etc. So how it is going to become the archive, and how it is going to affect the literature, especially when we talk about the literature on which we are going to research, how they are going to make history, repetition, and other things, how rethinking about the history, everything will come out only when we go for the modern history of modern archives. And as I told
Yeah.
you, maybe sometimes somebody can write a book
Sure.
that archives are passwords.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because literature and technology is also one of the areas
Yeah.
of my interest.
They go together. We cannot separate them. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Now, on behalf of the entire ISPL CG Forum family, it's now time to display the certificate as a token of love from our side. So now I'm requesting Nurul sir, please Sir, display the certificates. Archana ma'am, if you are here, please.
Archana ma'am,
Yes,
may I request
Yes,
one
ma'am.
thing?
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Please.
I think this is third or fourth times when I'm here. One request here to all the speakers, those who come here, especially those who are delivering the talks, can we display the contact number so that others, if they want, they can contact them? Because sometimes students, scholars, they may have some questions. So their email IDs, and if possible, I'm not saying it's okay. If possible, please display the contact number and the email IDs of the speakers. Please.
Yes, sir.
It's a suggestion from my side.
Good
Yeah.
suggestion.
I'm just writing my.
Yeah.
But one small request after this, I have to leave because some guests have come to my place.
Yes,
I
sir.
hope that's fine.
Yes, sir.
So thank you.
Okay, sir. Sir, please accept this certificate from our side. Thank you,
Thank
sir. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure for all of us to have you, sir. Please. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Now, Nurul, sir, next. Thank you, sir. This for hello.
Thank you. Thank you, Chirantanji. Thank you, Nurul.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
I think really it's
And all the participants, those who want to get the email ID of Dr. Samrat Sengupta, sir, he has already shared this. So please note down that.
And this certificate goes to Mr. Chirantan Das Mahapatra. You have very perfectly.
Yes.
That is the certificate goes to you. And
Thank you so much, madam.
And this month's event has been coordinated by Nurul Huda. So this certificate goes to Nurul Huda. So keep working like this, and you are a very active PRO of Chhattisgarh. So and this certificate goes to you, the Chhattisgarh Forum as a token of appreciation. Thank you, Nurul.
Thank you, ma'am. And happy Diwali to all of you from our
Same to
side.
you, same to you.
From-
Happy Diwali. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Asna ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, Asna
Yes.
ma'am. Thank you, Apit ma'am.
Sir, may we conclude?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Good night to all.